Hello. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Women's podcast. How are you?
Thank you for having me, and I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so excited. So, Michelle is a business mentor of mine, a friend, an inspiration of mine for many, many years. Michelle, you want to tell us about just about you and life and business and whatever you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I'm Michelle Hartzman. I've been a business owner for 8 years now, which is crazy to say. We're almost going on a decade. And I work with women like Jen, and I get to work with women like Jen for many years, which is amazing, helping them grow and scale their online businesses. In the midst of being a business owner, I'm a wife, I'm a dog mom, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, and my husband and I actively right now are in a very long fertility journey, which has been interesting, as a business owner who has such a personal brand and showing up so much and showing so much of my life, while then also having this really emotional part of my life where you want to keep some things private, but then you also want to talk about it because it's really lonely. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's amazing how you manage that duality, and I'm sure obviously even deeper feelings and emotions behind the screen, but your vulnerability to allow other women like myself to say like it is hard, and you can still do the things, you can still go after your dreams and your passions, and how do you find the strength, I guess, to be able to still do your business very successfully every single day. I mean, you have your team on the back end, but it's really you spearheading so much.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I learned early on in entrepreneurship that life will life. And it'll throw you curveballs and it will knock you down. And you are human outside of your business, right? And so that's something that one, I give myself grace, but also on the other side, I very much realize that what I'm actively feeling has absolutely nothing to do with whether I show up or not, right? And so I really kind of compartmentalized, I guess you would say, when it comes to like emotional things or lifing. I've really gotten to the point where it's like it can affect me. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't feel things or there's days that I don't want to show up, of course. But it's in those moments that I just simply remember that like my feelings aren't facts and my feelings don't dictate whether I show up in my business or not. Because honestly, I think it's harder to keep stopping and then starting rather than keeping the momentum inside of the business. So that's something I also keep in mind that like if I keep hiding, if I keep not showing up, if I keep pulling back because life is going to keep throwing stuff at me, then I'm going to feel like I'm going to keep starting over. And I'd rather honestly just push through it than keep starting and stopping.
And you're amazing at it because I felt like that too. And it's so hard to even keep pushing through, while you're going through it. So you started before business, you were working in the fitness industry and in your business, or before you started business coaching, you were in the fitness industry. And so how did you make that transition, and how has, your own fitness journey transformed as you've, really become an adult and figured out the balance of what helps you tick?
Yeah, I was in the health and wellness space for about 2 years. I ran a really successful business. I started my business in person and then I brought it into the online marketplace and was successful in both areas. And I loved it. Like I still have a passion for nutrition. I still work out very consistently. I take care of myself. My husband's a boxing coach and a personal trainer. So it's very much still a part of my life. But I also have a business background. And so when I was running my first iteration of my online business in the health and wellness space, I grew that business very successfully, very quickly. And it was kind of like an anomaly that I didn't realize. Like, as I was growing and I was making money, I had all these other coaches, like, what are you doing? Like, how are you figuring that out? Can you help me? And I was like, I'm just figuring it out on the way, just like you are. And then I did it again for a second year. And I realized, like, in my helping people for free as they were asking questions and getting on calls with people, what are you doing? Can you help me? That I actually liked the business side more so than the health and fitness side, which became a blessing for me because when I was in the health and wellness space, I was very much a macro coach, which if you're a macro coach listening, there's nothing against it. But for me, it didn't really work, being that I came from a background of obsessive food when I was a teen. When I was in my early 20s, it was always about body image. It was how much can I not eat? How much can I eat? And then purge. And it was just this on and off again cycle. So when I was macro tracking, I was a health and wellness coach, it was very much felt like my body was my business card. And it felt like if I didn't look a certain way, then that meant something. And I was like weighing every food. And I just felt like I was in jail. Like I remember sitting on the bed crying to my husband and being like, all I think about is food all day, every day. Like I absolutely cannot live like this anymore. And so I think it was a combination of everything. Business coaching felt more like me. And then on the other side, I was ready to release some beliefs I had about what nutrition needed to look like. And that's what really transitioned me into intuitive eating.
Love it. I love it. And I think that, not everyone's who's listening to this is gonna be starting their own business or in that chapter, but I think just that profound transition from, being a macro, coach in the wellness space to a business coach, well, a lot of similarities, is still a massive jump. And like there very easily can be that fear of, well, what if it doesn't work? Or what if I know what's working here and I know that, I can make an income here. So any suggestions or thoughts for women or moms that are trying to, feeling like that feeling of like, I can't do this anymore, whether it's career wise, whether it's relationship with food, their body, relationship, how to make that like feeling for themselves, that justification for themselves to take a leap when it really is the only choice for them, but is also the scariest choice.
Yeah, 100%. You know, what I always come back to is it's just deciding to trust yourself. That's really what it comes down to. And it's so interesting because we often trust other people and other things outside of us more than we trust ourselves. I think throughout the years, we're poked and prodded and told you have to look a certain way and be a certain way and say things a certain way. And you're constantly reinventing yourself to be approved by society or be approved by what somebody's telling you should do. And so it's very easy to lose yourself. And then let's say you're wanting to make a career shift and you mention it to a friend and they're like, oh my God, but you have such a good thing going on and your benefits and your family and your kids. And like, what if this happens? And then all of a sudden you're taking on identities and fears that aren't actually yours. And so I would say if you're in that place and potentially being influenced by something or someone outside of you, ask yourself, is this fear actually mine or somebody else's? And the biggest thing that I will also say on this is if you don't go for it, you'll regret it.
Mm-hmm.
I was recently listened to an audiobook. It's all about like how things to get done before 8 a.m. And she was saying in that book, she had interviewed a woman that worked at a nursing home. And she said, before my patients would pass away, I had a journal when I would ask them, like, what were your biggest regrets in life? And she said 99% of her patients said, not doing the thing I actually wanted to do, not living my life the way in which I actually wanted to live it. And I know we hear every day, like, you have one life, but you do. And I think the biggest regret you will have is saying you want to do something, but then never actually do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And how scary to think, getting to that point and being at that point of, the end of your life and like being like, I wish I'd done that thing. And like, I just can't imagine. It's scary now to do it, but to like get to that point and be like, I'll never get to do it. It's
Scary. And the other thing is like you'll figure it out. I think that's like what's always gotten me through. Like even in the hard moments, I'm not going to sit here and say I haven't navigated really hard things in business and hard seasons and ups and downs because everybody does. The valleys create the peaks, right? But it always comes back to like no matter what, I know I will figure it out. Like I've got me. And that's like I think every woman needs to realize that like even the jump is scary, but you will catch yourself. And I will tell you, it's not going to look exactly how you planned it to look. And eventually it's going to turn out better. The biggest thing you have to do.
your mental strength and what like you said, showing up every single day for your business, but even like I see you on Instagram and showing your non-negotiables and your Peloton walks and stuff like that. Like what do you remember a time when that wasn't the case? And like what have been the biggest things? Is it support systems? Is it, journaling, like what has helped you to like be so grounded in, no, I'm doing this for me, regardless of how it's affecting.
Yeah, I would say, it's interesting. Any middle children that are listening to this might resonate. I've got three sisters and I'm like smack dab in the middle. And so I think for me growing up, it was really instilled in me, not on purpose by my parents, but if I wanted something, I had to figure it out just because that's kind of how it goes when you're a middle child. Like you're learning from your older siblings, you're trying to take care of your little sibling, you're getting hand-me-downs, and if you want something, it's not really heard. It's you're there and your parents take care of you and they feed you and you're safe. And I had everything I needed growing up. But also from a mental standpoint and a surviving standpoint, it very much was if I wanted something, I had to do it. And then I took those same characteristics into my career. When I went to after college and I got my first career before I became a business owner, I just developed this. If I want something done, I have to do it. Which on the other side, it's not always the healthiest. We should be able to ask for help and we shouldn't have to wear every hat and we shouldn't have to do everything ourselves. But I do think that that developed just the mindset I have of like, if I want something, just do it. Just follow through on what you said. And that's a big value of mine that I have. I will tell you, I do procrastinate. I'm a human being, but I can clock it. I can say, oh, you're scrolling, or oh, like you're watching Love is Blind when really you promised yourself you were going to listen to your audiobook, right? Or like you said you were going to get 10K steps in and you've been literally sitting at your office all day long, go do something about it. And so I'm not going to sit here and say I'm perfect, but I am aware of it. And therefore, then I can then clock myself and I just plug back into, well, what's that value is follow through. If I don't follow through for me, I can't expect anyone else to follow through for me, right? And so I think a lot of us need to look at it that way, but it's so easy to let other things interfere and or make excuses like, oh, such a busy day, or oh my goodness, the phone rang and that distracted me. And it's like, yeah, and maybe it won't happen today, but then like it has to happen.
Absolutely. And I think that that's so powerful. And, especially in the world we live in right now, where, mental health is a challenge and so many people are struggling with it. I think that there's a lot of, giving yourself grace, and those things are absolutely vital and valid. And I also think what you just said of showing up for yourself, being accountable and being real with yourself and not allowing the expectations or thoughts or values of other people be the reason why you do things, because
Yeah.
that's not supporting your mental health either.
I recently heard something that stuck with me that discipline gives you freedom.
Mhm.
And I think discipline gets a bad rep. And it's like, oh my goodness, like they're so disciplined and like they take things so serious. And you don't have to go that route. You don't have to look at discipline in that aspect. But if you look at the life you want, the goals that you have for yourself, discipline will get you there. And so that's something that's really stuck with me is that if I want this life that I'm saying, I just get to be more disciplined because I will create that, right? And that's where I think a lot of people, if they look at it from that standpoint, like discipline gives me freedom. Discipline will give you the body that you want. Discipline will give you the energy that you want. Discipline will give you the money that you want, the career that you want. But a lot of us get so tripped up. And I mean, there's so many external things that are so distracting. And I think it's just a matter of clocking it and sometimes saying no to things that maybe interfere with like our goals of what we want right now. And I'll give an example. I used to be a social drinker. I used to love drinking on the weekends, and there's nothing wrong with drinking. I will still have a glass of wine every now and then. But even early on in my business, like we lived in Miami for a couple years, I was partying all the time, and I would wake up every weekend hungover. And I just realized it got to a point where if I want to create this life that I want, I keep getting in the way because now I'm useless on the weekends. I'm not getting anything done besides laying in bed and ordering food to my apartment. Like something had to change. And so at this point, like honestly, I don't like alcohol. Like I'll have a glass of wine or champagne every now and then, but I'd rather be in control and I'd rather wake up and have zero headache and feel better and know that, oh, I'm not going to skip my 8 a.m. workout or my 6 a.m. workout because I'm
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that can be hard because, like you said, the social side of things and kind of navigating that. But the more we hone into ourselves and our grounding, we see are we doing those things because, of the validation we're getting from others or the actual fun and navigating that? Everyone's different. I think that's, if you feel comfortable, can you share, as you've gone through your business, you've been in business for a while, you got married, and then, you said you've been working on your fertility journey. How has that been?
Long. Long. And anyone that's going through it as you're listening to this, like, just know that I see you and I hear you and I validate you, and it's hard. It's hard. It's lonely. People try to understand it and they don't, and you give the credit for it. People don't know what to say. It's like this all-encompassing thing that you almost feel bad for the person that's trying to make you feel better because it's so uncomfortable for them. But for me, having an online platform, having a community, it's been really important for me to be open about this because I don't really know any other business owners that have talked about having serious fertility struggles while running a business. It's a lot, especially now. We've been trying for over 2 years. Our first year we tried completely naturally, and then this last year we've been doing IUI. And my husband and I, we have unexplained infertility. And any hormone coaches or anyone listening to this, we've gotten everything beyond tested from like the holistic standpoint, from modern medicine standpoint. Like, we couldn't look more perfect on paper. And it's something that is just interesting because we've done 3 rounds of IUI. It's failed. It was emotional. And now we're at the standstill of the doctors, of course, want us to do IVF. But in my mind, I can't really justify it because there's nothing wrong with us. There is no reason we shouldn't be able to have kids naturally. That going the IVF route, it just seems kind of crazy to me. And so we're just in this decision-making time. And the last 2 months, we've given ourselves a break from doctors and people telling us what we should do. And I will say, like, I'm having the time of my life. I'm like, oh my God, I like forgot what life was like when you weren't tracking every cycle and looking at your ovulation, because it's affected my plans too. Like, there's certain times I can't travel. There's certain things I'm like, oh, it's that time of the month. Like, I've got to go to the doctor. And it's just, I didn't realize how consuming it was for me. So it's been a nice break. But I will say it's lonely. And I was just saying to my sister today, all my sisters have kids. And my husband and I are at this weird stage where all of our friends that are local have kids. All my sisters have kids. And then we have some friends that like are also in that other stage of having gotten divorced and have no kids. So they're dating, or they're not married yet, so they're dating and they have no kids. So I was like, we're in this weird in between that, like, it's hard to actually have friends. Not saying that we don't have friends, but yeah, Jen's nodding. Like,
Yeah.
you guys get it, right? Like, you guys get it where you're just in a different season than most people. So we also feel a little isolated because we're like, we're not going to go to the park with people's kids on a Saturday because it just wouldn't make sense if we don't have a child. And I'm not going to go to a first birthday party because we look like adult creeps. Like, it's just, there's so many like facets to it. So we're just in that weird stage of like, I know that we'll have more friends and more of a social life when we do have kids, but it's lonely.
I can imagine. And when you were going to all the doctor's appointments, did you feel supported by that community? Or are there things that like they never told you, or that you had to find out for yourself? Like, how that experience, I know you said they still want to, encourage IVF to help you, get the kids that you want, but how has it been up to this point with the healthcare system?
It's interesting. There was a nurse practitioner, ironically, every time I had my IUI, she was the one that did it. Like, I just think my cycle matched with her schedule, which was just funny. And we built a really good rapport, I would say, much deeper than me and my actual doctor. And
Mhm.
so when I had done my recent follow-up of what our next steps are, I had actually requested to meet with her because I thought that she would listen to me more than my doctor. And sure enough, I had my call with her, and it was so interesting because she's a nurse practitioner. She's not my doctor. And she advocated for me before we met on the call because she had to meet with my physician before her and I met. And she said, I met with your doctor and she suggests IVF. And she said, but I don't know what you want to do. She said, but I actually said to her, I don't think she's the best fit for IVF. I would rather do another round of IUI and do it in this way. It would be a different protocol where she was like, I think you would really, really respond to it because I almost can't justify IVF for you guys. And she was like, I'm sorry if I overstepped, if you're like, I really want IVF. And I just thought it was so interesting because I feel like she got to know me so well throughout our cycles and all of my implantations that she listened. She listened and she advocated for me, which I thought was like really, really cool. And I felt really heard and understood. But what's interesting to me, and I say this to my husband all the time, it's like a nurse practitioner should be paid more because I think that they do so much that people don't see, and they genuinely care about the patients and they listen and they hear things. And it's nice to have somebody just not say, here's the statistic, here's your age, here's what everybody else does, you should do it too. Right. And so that's felt relieving. But on the other side of like, I didn't know what I was getting myself into when the whole journey started. They don't tell you very much. You just show up and then you.
I'm so glad you had that experience with her. I think it's a game changer, obviously, like you just said, with having someone that really sees you, is able to give you advice that you were probably already kind of leaning towards, or at least felt, inclined to. I did a podcast episode a couple episodes ago about advocacy and how, really, like, if you had met with your doctor, maybe she would have pushed more for the IVF, and then depending on your personality, what you're comfortable with, how much you know about it, like, the comfort level changes as far as, do you just go through with it because your doctor told you to, or do you really listen to your gut? Have that strong, um, sense of self. You obviously do. How has it been with the like stigmas around fertility and having conversations with people, friends and family? Like, you felt heard, or do you feel like it's, I know you said it's the reactions are people try, but how has that experience been with kind of some stigmas?
It's been okay. It's weird because it people kind of treat you like someone died. Like that's the best way I could describe it because when someone passes, you don't know what to say to the person. You could say, I'm sorry, but there's no words, right? And I feel like that's almost how you're treated when you have infertility issues because people don't know what to say to you. So they treat you weird. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is like, I would just prefer if you treated me normal, right? Like, and we can talk about this, and I'm not looking for your sympathy. It's just a very real reality for us, right? And I think on the other side is, people really want to understand, and I give them credit. And I say years ago, my own sister had to do IVF, and she has two beautiful twins now, and we had very different fertility issues. She had to do IVF. She didn't, based on what was happening with her. And when she was going through it, we weren't at a stage where we were trying for kids yet. And so I didn't understand. And now that I'm in it, like I can sit and reflect on how lonely she must have felt. Like it makes me sad that like I couldn't be there for her. And she's really been there for me, which is nice because she gets it. And then everyone else I would say listens. The one piece of advice, please don't give this to anyone that's going through fertility, is it will happen when you just stop trying. It is not helpful advice. Everyone says that. And then the stories come of, oh my God, me and my husband were trying for so long. And then we like had this drunk night and like we were just not trying. And then it happened. Like you guys should do that. And I'm like, my husband had open heart surgery. Like he doesn't drink alcohol. Like we can't just go have a drunk night and hope for the best. And so it's interesting some of the advice that you get when you're not looking for it either. Like I think a lot of unsolicited advice comes in I think in any scenario when you're dealing with a problem, naturally people want to help you fix it, right? So people give you advice and unsolicited advice, and we just, at this point we take it with a grain of salt. We say, "Oh, thanks so much for," we move on.
I get that because I think that not knowing what to say and wanting to like be there for someone, and so trying, and but having that advice as far as like having a conversation, and even just trying to hear where you're at and how you're feeling sounds like the best way, versus trying to like come up with something, or acting like saying I'm sorry and acting like you said, acting like a death. Do you have any advice for someone that is navigating struggles?
Uh, I think the biggest thing is stop Googling. Stop immediately. It's not helpful unless you're just looking up really happy stories. But Google has a way of showing you negative statistics. Um, on the other side of it, I would say, now that we're like on our 2 month break a little bit, it's just, and I get it because like women listening to this that are really in their fertility journey, like I say the thing that I didn't want to hear, where it's like making the journey more fun. Because when you're so in it and you're tracking and you're looking at your age and it's like everyone around you feels like they're surpassing you and their kids are 5 years old and you're like, oh my God, five, I don't have one, mine's zero. You know what I mean? And so it can feel like a lot of pressure coming from so many areas. And I will say, like, as we've taken this break, my husband and I look at each other and we're like if we feel just physically better, our marriage is better, like because it takes a toll on you because everything's so planned and it's so scheduled and it's like you don't feel like doing it certain times. And I would say just like having a little more fun, whether that's maybe taking a month off or doing a date night, just those little things to create some normal, really, really important.
Thank you. I think that that's incredible advice. And, you've set such a incredible example, for women to go after what they want and also acknowledge that this is freaking hard, all of the components that we've talked about, while managing, a beautiful marriage, beautiful puppies, your business, and, striving for everything that you're desiring in life. You're an inspiration to me, and I think everyone, listening. Anything else that, from the stuff we've talked about that, you wanted to share advice, women or moms listening?
Yeah, I think if you're going through a hard time right now and you're seeing maybe other people have what you have, or you're seeing people live a life that you really want, just know that in those moments, like it's okay to feel sad for you and happy for them at the same time. I think that it's interesting in the fertility realm of, let's say one of your best friends gets pregnant and they show up and they're like, I didn't want to tell you. That's one of the worst things to hear as a friend. Don't do that to your friend. If you're listening and you're pregnant, just tell them. They'll be so happy for you. But like the truth is behind that, like on the receiving end, you could be really sad for yourself, but also happy for somebody else. Somebody just got a promotion and you've been waiting on your promotion for the last year. Doesn't mean you're not going to get yours. And you could be a little disappointed for yourself, but so happy for them. And what I also like to look at that as is the more times you get shown the things that you want literally right in front of you, it's literally the universe, God, source, whatever you believe in, showing you like you're next. Like it's possible, right? It's giving you validation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why I love having you as my business coach. I am so grateful. Thank you so much for joining us, for sharing, your business journey and your personal journey and your vulnerability. We appreciate you and we wish you all the things and just in whatever is the best timing for you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Thank you guys for listening. We're so excited. I will put Michelle's info if you want to follow her on Instagram.
Whatever you believe in, show